Welcome back to XRAY in the Morning. I'm Kira Lindenberg.
And I'm Colin Jones.
How's it going?
You know, not bad. I think we were just discussing our lack of sleep. And I realized, I don't know what's in your thermos over there, but I realized...
It's just whiskey.
I realized that I'm totally uncaffeinated right now.
Oh, no, Colin, what are you doing?
It explains a lot, including like unnecessary, call sign, additional like 2 seconds after you did it. Because I
really want people to know what they are listening to.
This is XRAY FM, by the way.
I apologize for nothing.
Yeah.
And KQRZ.
Yeah, exactly.
People are like changing their dial.
Exactly. Lead us into local news, Kara.
All right, we've got some pretty awesome state news. The state of Oregon could be held in contempt of court for slow access to mental health care. A judge nearly held Oregon in contempt this week because the state ignored a previous court order to evaluate the mental health of a defendant. The state was not found in contempt, but it is not out of the woods yet. The Oregon State Mental Hospital is full, which has created a backlog of criminal defendants waiting for mental health evaluations. This in turn has caused delays in trial. And people waiting for evaluation are often spending more time in jail awaiting trial than they would in prison for the low-level crimes they are accused of. So that sounds like a problem. Oregon is under a 2003 Ninth Circuit ruling that mandates criminal defendants in need of evaluation must be admitted to the state hospital within 7 days. In the case this past week, the individual in question has been waiting for more than 4 months.
Shoot.
Yeah. Craig Johnson, a senior assistant attorney general, is arguing that this mandate is, quote, arbitrary and unenforceable. The judge says that she will give Oregon another 7 days or it will be held in contempt.
Yeah, it's not great.
No.
It's not a great look.
No, but it is just one more story in the never-ending saga of we need some mental health reform in this state/country.
Yeah, absolutely. Oregon is poised to join the national popular vote movement. For the first time, a proposal that Oregon honor the national popular vote in presidential contests got a vote on the Senate floor on Tuesday, passing easily. With the 17-12 vote, Senate Bill 870 moves on to the House of Representatives, where similar proposals have passed 4 times since 2007. The decision means Oregon might become the latest state to join the National Popular Vote Compact. The compact is an agreement among states to apportion their electoral votes not to whichever presidential candidate wins their own state, but to the candidate with the most votes nationwide. The compact would kick in once there's a critical mass of states involved, representing at least the 270 electoral votes required to win the presidency. To date, 15 states have joined, totaling 189 electoral votes. Oregon would add 7 votes to that total. The bill now moves on to the House of Representatives. Governor Kate Brown's office says she supports the proposal.
Colin, what do you know about this proposal?
A moderate amount.
Talk to me, because what this sounds like to me is that this is sort of a workaround to rid us of the Electoral College.
That is exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah, it is a state-led effort to sort of circumvent the Electoral College.
Interesting.
And the main challenge is that to get to 270, you're going to need some red states.
Yeah.
And those red states don't have a lot of incentives to pass legislation like this. I believe all of the 15 coming up on 16 states have been pretty solidly blue. And so it's just like Texas isn't going to sign on to this. Okay. Certainly not Wyoming, who is heavily advantaged by the Electoral College, right?
That's an interesting point, yeah.
So
here's a legitimate question and not a sarcastic question. I know it's hard to tell with me sometimes.
Especially when I'm uncaffeinated.
This is my fun game that I play with you when you're not caffeinated.
Yeah, exactly.
Am I kidding or not? No one knows. Well, now I've forgotten the question. No, my question is this going to come back to bite us? Because at the moment, I think blue states are signing on to this proposal because in the general election, I believe in the last 2 Republican presidents, the Democrat has actually won the national or the popular national vote, right? Now, is that in your humble Colin opinion?
Yes. I'm known for my humility. It's true.
Is this something? Yes, exactly what I was trying to insinuate. Is this something like, are we signing on to this simply because this is, the Electoral College has bitten us in the last 2 Republican elections? Or are we signing on to this because there really is a Republican advantage that's throwing these elections, and so the Republicans going to win when they don't really
I think the answer is I think the answer is yes to both.
Yeah.
I think obviously both in 2016 when Trump was elected but lost the popular vote, and then in 2000 when George W. Bush was elected but lost the popular vote.
Right.
And I believe, I can't remember, it was like 70 years ago. I believe the time prior was also a more conservative candidate who lost the popular vote. And I would say that there's a rural advantage to how it's structured, right? So rural voters are weighted more heavily. Rural states are weighted more heavily.
Just by nature of how the Electoral College is set up.
Yeah, no, exactly. And which is intentional, right? Like that was a design, right? The creation of the Senate was very much a design to balance sort of less populated states against sort of the strength of highly populated states. At that time, 200 years ago, the gap was a couple million people between the least populated and the most populated.
Right.
It might not even have been that much, but it was a fairly small gap actually by today's standards. And now it's, you have a gap between 500,000 people in Wyoming and 42 million in California.
That's a good point.
And they have the same number of senators.
And it's only going to continue to get worse because, the trend that we're seeing, anybody who lives at any large city in the U.S. can tell you that they just keep growing and growing and growing. And partially just because of the nature of the jobs that people have nowadays.
Urbanization has been an ongoing trend for decades.
It is, absolutely, and for better or for worse. But the reality is that, okay, so now you've convinced me I'm on your side.
So there is some structural disadvantage
Sure.
to urban states and highly populated states, which
not because we don't like them, but just because they have millions less people.
And it is one of those anyways, yes. So gun safety classes for Oregon first graders are expected to return next legislature.
I'm sorry, I think I had something in my ear. Can you say that again?
No, you heard me. You heard me.
The
Oregon first graders could attend gun safety classes at their schools under legislation pushed this year and expected to return next session. While the bill outlining this program has solid support from both Democratic and Republican lawmakers, it's unlikely to advance beyond its initial public hearing after a deadline for committee work sessions recently expired. Regardless, supporters were encouraged with its progress and promised to return. If passed, Senate Bill 801 would have enabled school districts and public charter schools to offer annual 30-minute firearm safety and accident prevention classes to first grade students. The curriculum would need to include 3 key things. First, the proper steps a child should take upon encountering an unsecured firearm. Second, the differences between video game violence and real-life violence. And third, the dangers of confusing toy guns and real guns. The base bill has bipartisan and bicameral support, which may be because of specific language in the bill that requires the class to be non-political, saying they, quote, may not encourage or discourage possession or ownership of firearms. Derek LeBlanc, lead writer of the bill, has said, whether you agree with firearm ownership or not, don't think for a second that your kids can't come into contact somewhere else. He continued, we talk about helmets, stranger danger, the DARE program, water safety, anti-bullying. There's more that needs to be done when it comes to education with firearms.
Wow, I'm super in support of this just from hearing what you've said in the last 30 seconds. I think it's a weird phenomenon that happens in the U.S. where a lot of our education on, certain topics that are maybe a little bit political tends to be this thing doesn't exist and pretend that it doesn't exist and we just
Totally.
that's how quite a lot of states and districts deal with, especially sex education.
Yes.
We're just like sex isn't a thing and it won't be until you're 35 and married. So I think this is we can't deny the fact that kids are coming into contact with guns and it is a real thing. And let's prepare our children the best we can.
Spot on.
A new study says that people living in East County are more at risk during extreme weather. Be it flooding or extreme heat, folks living in far east Portland, also called the Numbers, I learned recently, are most affected by weather hazards. According to the study from Portland State University, this is especially true for low-income households and those along Interstate 205. At blame is a lack of green spaces, street trees, and other vegetative surfaces. Green infrastructure helps prevent areas from heating up in the summer and helps to absorb rainwater in the wet season. Geography Department Chair Hejuan Chang, is that how you would say that?
Sure.
Okay, great. Noted that many families living in the area are ethnic minorities who do not speak English. He said that the biggest thing the city can do to ease flooding and heat is to plant and maintain green infrastructure. And get those bioswales.
Yeah.
That's like Portland 101, man.
Yeah, it is super noticeable. Like as soon as, the first issue had the more sparse the canopy and sort of just green space is.
Yeah, absolutely. Does Deep Pave Portland still exist?
I believe so. Unless they went away recently.
I don't think so, but I think that they're a great.
They are.
Deep Pave Portland. It's part of the effort to, there's a lot of spaces that are covered with concrete. Back when we thought that was a good thing, and then realized that actually. Flooding and heating and lots of things that we deal with as far as extreme weather come down to the fact that we need green spaces and we need the earth to, lo and behold, exist the way that it's supposed to exist before humans came and covered it all with concrete and metal.
Exactly. Also local, a racist incident at high school basketball game prompts new bill. A new bill prohibits schools from hosting interscholastic activities unless they create sensitivity policies designed to maintain, quote, equality, civility, dignity, and civil rights. It outlines not only what to do when students and spectators yell derogatory words or insults, but also how schools must handle the complaints process. The bill was prompted by a recent incident at St. Helens High School during a basketball game against Park Rose High School. Students allegedly made monkey noises and shouted racial slurs at black students. According to Park Rose students, this is repeat behavior from St. Helens. The bill was unanimously voted through the Oregon House on Thursday and now moves to the Senate.
I have not read this bill, and so I have no opinion on whether it's going to be effective or not. But just like the gun story that we were talking about a minute ago, I think it's a really good sign when as in politics and as a community, we start acknowledging out loud that these things are happening. Guns exist and children come in contact with them. Racism exists and children come in contact with it. Simply by writing this bill and making it a public issue, that's going to do a lot, I think, to change the public narrative and say, like, we have to acknowledge this and we have to start changing it.
Mm-hmm.
A rock slide closes Multnomah Falls Trail indefinitely. What? No! Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry. Sometimes you learn the news along with us in real time.
That's so sad.
After a rock slide closed the Multnomah Falls Trail on April 5th, geologists discovered an unsteady rock overhang. Crews will have to clear the overhang before the trail can reopen. Crews will have to wait for a week without rainfall before they can begin clearing the rock.
No.
The forest, it's about to be summer. The Forest Service offered no firm deadline. Hikers will still be able to hike the lower part of Waukena Falls, which runs from the lower parking lot up to Waukena Falls, and then the small canyon past Ferry Falls, which is so pretty. The trail initially reopened in November after being closed since September 2017 following the Eagle Creek fire. The Forest Service advises hikers to, quote, look up, look down. Look all around. They didn't say that part. I said that part. And to pack...
Here's addition.
Because everything's a nursery rhyme to me today. And to pack emergency supplies in case a rock slide leaves them stranded on the trail. Wowzers.
This is so sad. Like, I just feel like it's thing after thing in Multnomah Falls. And I mean, a week without rain, it's they're going to clear this in August.
Oh, that's not true. Remember how dry it was until like 2 weeks ago? Yeah, this is really... the only good thing I could say that would come of this is that I feel like there are a lot of really beautiful waterfalls in the gorge, and maybe it's their time to shine. They're like, Multnomah Falls has been taking all the glory for all these years.
I'm out our news writers. Like, really, you had to end us on this note. Like, this is where we had to stop. Because this is like very depressing.
Colin, when this show is over, you and I will talk about all the different hikes we can go do. There's so many waterfalls in this land.
I'm into it.
I really quickly have to tell you that recently somebody told me they watched a documentary on Einstein, and it said that Einstein came up with his theory of relativity while hiking Multnomah Falls. I have no idea if that is accurate, but listen, listeners, if you know that is true, I need you to text me immediately because this is extremely important information.
And if you know it's false, just keep it to yourself. Because I'd like to.
I don't care.
Yeah, I'd like to repeat this fact multiple times and really plan to.
You're welcome for spreading the seed of that possibly false rumor.
Yeah, this may or may not be fake news. Like,
but if it is, it's the kind of fake news I like.
Kira, I think we're fake news.
Oh, no.
Bad news.
And on that note,
Yeah.
we're going to leave. This was News with Friends, brought to you by Morale Inc. Find out more at moraleinc.biz. X-Ray in the Morning is also supported by our presenting sponsor, Tom Dwyer Automotive. Find out more at tomdwyer.com.
Up next, the folks of Kickstand Comedy join us in the studio with their special guest of the week to discuss local stand-up. Then we'll end with a rerun episode of Minority Retort with host Jason Lamb and his guest Dale Orlandersmith of the Portland Center Stage production of Until the Flood, recorded back in the end of March.
I think we'd like to take a moment to recognize the names of some members that make X-Ray possible. So a big thank you to Terrence King, Nick Tretlak, Jan Epstein, Malika Belhaj, Cameron Gimo, Ariel Dickerson, Nicole Worthington, Mark Weinsoft, Scott Bauer, Derek Henderlong,
Thomas Kana, Justin Hawkins, Doug McKeague, Maggie Gardner, Gene Etheridge, Michael Walters, Holly Winston, Frank Ortega, Drew Lunston, and Bonnie Croissant.
Thank you, everyone who is a member here at X-Ray, because we could not be here without you. We love you guys. Like, really, we appreciate you.
So much love.
Anyway, we're going to take a break. Kickstand Comedy will be back in just a minute. Have a great morning. Happy Friday, everybody. This is X-Ray, where radio is yours.